welcome to the Stop Booking Around podcast. I'm Jon Cronshaw.
I'm Russ Evans.
Last week I gave you the homework to produce a character profile for your main protagonist. How did you find the exercise?
I've had this protagonist in my head for a long time. It was nice, actually. I found it a lot easier than some of the other tasks to write about her and to boil down in some ways who she is. And I think that made me kind of get to know her a bit better and think about her in some ways that I hadn't before.
That's good. I'm just having a look at your file that you've shared with me on Google Docs, and I've noticed you've got a picture of Anya Taylor-Joy. Who's she and why is she your casting?
Largely, I think her look is the main thing. She's somewhat waifish. She's one of these faces that can appear to be very neutral, in some ways wide-eyed. She has a semi-otherworldly look, but she's not some elfin beauty. It's not about her being attractive. It's not about that sort of thing. If you were to just see her in a crowd, you're not going to go, wow, oh, that person stands out. She's been in several different films, playing several different roles. I think the two most notable that people might know her for is that she's the protagonist in M. Night Shyamalan's Split, and she is essentially the protagonist in a recent film called The Witch, with two V's instead of a W, in which she sort of plays the daughter of a Puritan family. If some time down the line, if there were ever to be a film made of this, then yeah, her or someone sort of akin to her, you know, the look of the character is this. She's sort of somewhere between 18 and 25.
So you've got role protagonist, and then you've got demeanour, angry, sarcastic, moral, pedantic, nihilistic. I did ask you to write a character profile, not an autobiography. Well, yeah, nature, kind, anxious, insecure, depressed. Yeah. So age 21. Just based on that bit alone and the fact that you've got this kind of high fantasy setting, and it seems to me that you're going to be writing a kind of young adult, new adult kind of story about personal growth and development or whatever.
Well, it's like I said, it's about actualization, being nothing and making yourself into something, which is largely part of growing up as well. Part of the way I'll use her character is to talk about the effects that anxiety and depression and a lack of self-worth and sort of motivation, where they get you and what they can do to you, and in some ways what you have to do to get out of them. And I'm going to be using a ridiculous fantasy setting to do that.
You know, calling Evan Russell might not be the best idea. I think we need to.
Yeah.
Seriously, though, so you've got the name, what is it? Theodora Rose Wishart.
Yes. Yeah. I think that the naming convention of my characters are going to be indicative of the fact that this is a fantasy book. And I've always enjoyed well-made fantasy character names. I've always been a huge fan of Terry Pratchett's names for his characters, ranging from Samuel Vimes to the sort of somewhat ridiculous like Moist von Lipwig, who are all brilliantly realised characters. And, you know, after a while, you get over the name. The name is an interesting thing. You know, Moist is a brilliant name for a main character. But after a while, you don't keep thinking, Moist. You just know that that's his name. And I think that the characters are well written enough for you to just accept that. And you stop kind of just looking at thinking the name is ridiculous, and you just accept it and you focus more on who they are and what they do. Yeah. Her name will eventually be shortened in the story to sort of, you know, Dora. I mean, her background is not special in any way. Her own opinion of herself is literally that she's nothing special. She lived a dreary, boring life, no great joys, no great sadnesses, very sort of cookie cutter. And now she will be injected into this situation.
We mentioned last week, I'm just trying to think back now, the core for me with stories is to work out what the character's fatal flaw is, almost what their thing is that they need to work on, that they need to get over in order to progress as a character, in order to have an arc and a story.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you've got that, if you've got your kind of central theme or central core of this character that needs to change.
She's just waiting for everything to spin down. There's no real dynamism in her. There's no motivation beyond the basic needs of get up, eat, go to the toilet, drink exist. She's allowing herself to just exist.
So at this point, I would say your character sounds really boring. Like,
Yes.
why would I care? Why would I want to read on with this character if this is what you're presenting?
In and of herself, at the start, it's not her that's interesting. She's like a Harry Potter. Harry Potter as a character isn't particularly interesting. What happens to Harry is interesting. She is forced to go through experiences beyond her control, and she has to learn to take control. And what I want is to develop her from this sort of almost inanimate object that the world throws around to someone who starts to take control.
It's essentially the character arc is Dora needs to take control of her existence, of her life. Otherwise, is it a fate worse than death, basically?
Yes. There'll definitely be a fate worse than death for her, and it could have further implications for those around her.
Okay, so she's got the motivation to do this. She's got the kind of the push. So yeah, I think you've actually come up with an interesting thing there, because within this character, because you're building from these flaws, you've built in a conflict already. And that's what it is. Stories about change. It's about conflict. And if you don't have change or you don't have conflict, you don't have a story. So yeah, we've got that built in. That's fantastic.
We mentioned this, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, about having DM syndrome. So I, over my years of playing Dungeons and Dragons or the role-playing games, you think up interesting names for your characters, because you want those names to in some way represent them, like the way it sounds, or what maybe nationality it sounds like that name comes from. These things all evoke certain images in people. It's just the way sort of
like Herc Braveman, for example.
Yes, exactly, like the brave spacefaring hero Herc Braveman, available at Amazon. So, in terms of naming conventions, I was curious with you and your characters. Do you think of the character and then think of their name, or do you think of a name and then try and think of a character to fit it, or is the truth really more somewhere in between?
It depends on the project. I mean, with my Wasteland stuff, it was about finding the voice of the character more than anything. The voice is really important to me. I want every character in my books to sound distinct, and I'll come up with a name later. Sometimes it's my main character in the Wasteland series. When I first started writing that, my first draft of Night of the Wasteland, which was the second Wasteland book, but it's the first one that I wrote, the character was called the Old Man. So all the way through, I was just writing the old man, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then I think it was just because of really liking the kind of biblical imagery and the kind of symbolism with Abel as a character that I changed it to Abel.
Yes.
So I had Abel as the character, but that didn't come first. I had to really write in that character. I had to get to know his voice. And he wasn't an old man. This is the thing. It's like I wrote him as an old man.
Yeah,
calling him an old man, but he wasn't an old man. His actions spoke of someone who was maybe in their 30s. So yeah, that changed, and I think it changed for the better. The one character that I had in mind for the series, who's a bit of a mentor figure for Abel, I did come up with the name first. Her name's Sal, short for salvation. It's his naming for like on the nose. And so she's a priest, and she helps him to get through drug addiction and to kind of find a purpose and hope in this terrible world that's a post-apocalyptic wasteland. And as the series goes on, that kind of develops more into a romantic kind of thing. Now, with my Blind Gambit books, the names were drawn up as kind of brainstorms, because a lot of the names are handles. They use names like in a video game, because Blind Gambit's set in a video game world. And so I've got names like Rhymes with Peanut, which is a reference to Princess Bride. And I've got Aerith Lives, which is Final Fantasy VII. I've got Epona, so it's like EPWNA. Yeah. So it's, Epona as in, the mythological horse, and Zelda, and then obviously Pwned, which is, it's all kind of mashing together cultural things. So, and then from that character, because of that, he dresses like Link, and he kind of speaks in a very particular way. And my main character, I had his username straight away. I had Neuromantic, but it was neuro spelt as in like neuromancer.
Oh, yeah.
So again, I like the pun and I like the play of that. He likes 80s music. He likes William Gibson. So that all kind of fuses together. So I'm going to give you some more homework, Russ. Next week, I want you to do the same thing for your main protagonist. Now, I'm just trying to think. Last time we spoke, we talked about your kind of story core. You were vague on what your protagonist is or was. It seemed that it was kind of society, maybe. I don't know, but you need to come up with some kind of central bad guy. It can be someone who becomes an antagonist, over time, but someone who can be a bit of a focus for the series or novel, whatever you're writing. I mean, we'll talk about that, what you're actually going to be writing once you start getting down to the nitty-gritty of things. Thank you for listening. If you could share this with an author friend or someone who you think is interested in writing a novel but doesn't have the motivation or is looking for an excuse to do anything but do that, point them towards this. They can follow along with Russ's journey. If you can leave a review on iTunes, that would be really helpful. Help spread the word about this. And you can follow me on Twitter. It's at JL Cronshaw. My website's joncronshaw.com. It's JONCRONSHAW. Now, if you want to email me, it's john@joncronshaw.com. So if you've got something you want to say for me or Russ, just email me and we'll talk about it on the show. So until next time, cheerio.
Bye.